As a quick introduction, I'd like to say thank you for choosing my CV and putting some time aside to interview me. I have 20 years experience working in the public sector, 10 plus years experience working as a project and program lead manager. I have service redesign experience, commissioning. I have worked for various different health areas across the Department of Health, NHS England, CCGs, local authorities, Ministry of Justice, community providers, London Fire Brigade. I've geographically worked across London as well. And I just would like to thank you for taking time to see me, and hopefully you'll enjoy this presentation. Thank you. The question I've been asked to develop in this PowerPoint presentation and answer is, how do I deal with short, medium, and long-term delays to a project? Well, short-term delays can happen for any number of reasons. I've worked on projects where you've had politically changes in the government or the organisation. You've had leads go on sick, long-term sick. You've had budget changes. You've had changes in the goals. You've had changes of providers, which change what sort of project you needed to provide. So those are things that you would deal with quite regularly. However, when we're talking about what is a medium delay and a long-term delay, I feel that those should have been mitigated with good planning. So if you have a good planning structure in place, you're regularly reporting, you know what your issues are, you know what your risks are, project leads and people know their roles and responsibilities, you really shouldn't have delays from a medium or long-term perspective, because those should have been mitigated. Also, it makes it a little bit more difficult when talking about short and long-term, medium-term issues when you really don't know the length of the project. So you would deal with a short-term project on a 3-month project. Obviously, that 1 or 2 weeks would be a short-term issue. However, a short-term issue on an 18-month-long project might be 2 or 3 months, which give you completely different perimeters of how you would deal with that particular issue in a short, medium, and long-term approach. So this presentation is going to be a bit more of an overview, given that I don't know the exact situation. Thank you. So here we have some sort of broad brush approach to how you identify and resolve your issues that you're particularly going to have, it be these short-term, medium-term, or long-term. Obviously, experience plays a large part in being able to identify risks, issues that may impact on a project being delayed. I have a large amount of experience across a large area of things, which I've already covered. And I feel that experience actually helps me identify a lot of risks, especially if you have 20 plus projects happening at the same time. Not all projects are taking the same amount of time. That you can't give each project the same amount of time that you would like to. But my experience has shown me that often I can predict, or at least have a rough educated guess about where a potential issue might be coming up. And then I can obviously take that to management, or I can start implementing something to hopefully mitigate that risk, so it's going to be less of a problem in the future. There are so many tools out there that you could use, Prince2 or Agile, or some of the areas that have been referenced in this document, that help you to develop program management tools to mitigate the risk as much as possible. Here we have a couple of very broad brush actions. First of all, you have to acknowledge that there is an issue. So are we going to miss a deadline today, tomorrow? When is that going to happen? What resources do we need to help us manage the delay? Do we have time to bring in a steering group, a sponsor? Is this something that can be dealt with in a couple of hours, or is it something that needs to be looked at over a longer period of time? And then obviously communicating. Once the problem has been raised, either by the project lead or the program manager, who do you then take it through to? Who does it need to go to? Do you have a process in place for reporting such problems? Do they directly go to the line manager? Do all issues and risks need to be communicated up to the stakeholder steering committee? Does it need to go further? Does it need to go to a board? What's the seriousness? Do you have a risk profile? Do you have something that rates the impact? Have these tools already been put in place, or do they need to be developed? One of the key areas that I feel that helps deal with short-term actions and mitigating risks is that I have a large amount of experience related to stakeholder engagement and developing relationships. You need that when you're working across public and private organisations. Example of a current IT experience is when I was working for NHS Digital and looking at the patient record scheme there of sharing patient records between community providers. At the time, it was 111 and the acute sector and primary care. These things really need to, they're very technical, obviously technical project. And if you didn't have relationships quickly with people and you didn't have that kind of ability to talk to people and to learn things very quickly from them, then short-term risks, medium and long-term, to be honest, can go by the way very easily, and you can miss things. So I think having relationships and engaging with people is one of the key things for dealing with an action as far as risks and issues. Obviously, a medium-term risk is a little bit different from a short-term risk in that you have a bit more time. You can identify and evaluate alternatives. You can consider consequences more openly and take a bit more of a time to look at what you could be doing differently. This is less of a firefighting approach and a bit more of an organised approach, but not as well as organised as what you would do for a long-term aspects and actions of issues and risks. I think that the actions are similar to short-term actions. Do you have a log where you have analysed the potential risks and the impact on the project? Have you assigned them a number? Are they what sort of, is it unexpected? Was it expected? Do you now go to a steering group? Do you now take it to your manager? Do you take it to the board? What kind of mitigations do you have in place? Have you got any planned mitigations in place? Are you going to develop them? So there are various different tools and issue logs and risk logs that you can implement to help you with a medium term approach. A long-term approach is really where the experience comes into play. If you've worked on a lot of NHS projects, or a lot of IT projects, or whatever within the public service, you know that there's specific things that happen within public service that might not happen within the private area, and certainly areas where within primary care or acute care, there's different politics that are involved, there's different people involved. So you just have to be aware, as it says here, you have to be aware that your project has its own rhythm and flow. There are different things that can impact on it. Long-term, obviously, process, scheduling, and communication. Really the key areas here. And that takes me on to the next area of my experience that helps. For long-term success of projects and dealing with issues and mitigating the risks, etc., organization. I've been program managing for a long time now. I'm used to using things like Clarity or SharePoint, Vision. I've worked within the Agile environment. I'm Prince 2 practitioner qualified, and I've worked in a lot of different organizations that do things very differently. So, for instance, the average CCG would have a very light touch approach because usually people aren't that trained in it. Sometimes it's very new. Local authority recently with Croydon, I had to develop the entire program management from scratch. So teach people, mentor people, what's a flash report, what's reporting, what should you do with the report when someone asks you to update on their project, where are all the files kept, SharePoint system, have you ever written a PID before, have you ever done an evaluation before? These are all things that I have to do from the ground up. I've done it a number of times. Also fitted into existing program management structures. So for instance, with NHS Digital, there were at least 2 to 3 different levels of reporting that needed to be done every month, not just my own stakeholders for my own project, but then you had to report up to the Healthy London Partnership, you had to report further up into NHS England on the process, on the progress, that kind of thing. But whatever it is organisation. This is really, really important because the more organised you are, the less things are going to fit through your fingers, especially if you're running multiple projects at the same time. I do not believe in a silver bullet approach to successful project management. I think you need to personalize it to the organization. I am not a massive fan of huge reporting structures, massive amounts of information. I have done that. So, for instance, for the Ministry of Justice, where we literally had the Minister of Justice, talking to us and asking what these projects were and stuff, we had everything. We had RAID, issue logs, risk logs, spreadsheets up the wazoo. So I'm used to either doing a very light touch or doing a full on, but I really feel that you need to figure out what kind of pressure people are already under, what kind of priorities people are putting on this as far as personal agendas and organizational agendas, and then what kind of commitment they can make and what kind of training that they've already had. This is very, very is important for the long-term mitigation of any sort of issues or risks that can affect projects. And finally, key points. As I said in my last slide, you can take a very, very organized and very, very in-depth approach where you have a log and an issue for everything, or you can have quite a light touch approach depending on the organization. Whatever it is, you need to be very aware of the surrounding environment. I think my experience has given me a very broad range of being able to see not just the details but also the whole picture. That's a key strength, I would say, from my experience. I have obviously experience in the areas I dealt with earlier, but also analytical experience as an acute contract manager. I have stakeholder engagement manager as a stakeholder engagement project manager. I have experience within Richmond PCT, West London CCG, Bromley CCG, NHS England, Croydon, London Fire Brigade, HMCTS, of improving existing processes, be they policies or structures or ways to deal with program management, used to developing project documentation, business cases, issue logs, risk logs, milestone planning, action logs, flash reports, RAID reports. I very much prefer to have more of a keeping it very simple approach, a plan on a page, and keeping reports to the minimum. I'm a very quick learner, and I feel that my life experience of traveling in multiple countries around the world, working in different countries, learning different languages, it really helps me connect easily and quickly with a wide variety of stakeholders and key personnel, from be that a user all the way up to a chief executive. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to my report and PowerPoint, and I'll now be online to answer any questions. Thank you.